1940, the world was already at war. Germany had invaded many countries in Europe. France had fallen. Britain was fighting alone. The United States had not yet joined the war, but leaders in Washington knew that danger was growing. The U.S. Army was small compared to the armies in Europe. It did not have modern equipment. Many soldiers still used horses for transport. Trucks were heavy and slow. The Army needed something new, a small, fast vehicle that could move across mud, sand, snow, and rocky land. The Army wanted a vehicle that could carry soldiers, carry equipment like radios or machine guns, travel off-road, be light and strong, be easy to repair, be produced quickly in large numbers. This request would lead to the creation of one of the most famous vehicles in history, Jeep. But in 1940, the Jeep did not yet exist. In June 1940, the U.S. Army sent out a request to 135 automobile companies. They asked for bids to design a light reconnaissance vehicle. The requirements were very strict. Weight, no more than 300 pounds, later changed. Four-wheel drive, carry 600 pounds. Wheelbase under 75 inches. Fold-down windshield. Able to run at 50 miles per hour. Delivery of a prototype in just 49 days. This was almost impossible. Most companies ignored the request. They believed the timeline was too short. They thought it could not be done. Only 2 companies responded seriously at first. American Bantam Willys Overland. Later, a 3rd company joined, Ford Motor Company. These 3 companies would shape history. American Bantam was a small car company based in Pennsylvania. It was not powerful like Ford. It did not have much money, but it was brave. Bantam believed it could meet the Army's request. The company hired an engineer named Karl Probst. He was very skilled and worked quickly. He completed the design plans in just a few days. Probst created a small, boxy vehicle with flat sides, round headlights, an open body, simple controls, 4-wheel drive. The prototype was called the Bantam Reconnaissance Car, BRC. On September 23, 1940, the Bantam prototype arrived at Camp Holabird in Maryland. It was driven there from Pennsylvania, even before testing began. The Army was impressed. The vehicle was not perfect. It was heavier than the Army wanted, but it worked. It moved across rough ground. It was fast. It was tough. However, there was a problem. Bantam was too small. The Army feared Bantam could not build thousands of vehicles fast enough. War was coming. Production speed mattered. Because the Army worried about Bantam's size, it shared Bantam's design plans with Willys and Ford. This decision would later create controversy. Both companies built their own versions. Willys created a model called the Willys MA. It had a stronger engine than Bantam's version. This engine would become famous as the Go Devil engine. It produced 60 horsepower, which was powerful for such a small vehicle. Ford built the Ford GP, sometimes called Pygmy. It also followed the Army's basic requirements, but had Ford's own design touches. Now the Army had 3 similar vehicles: Bantam, BRC, Willys, MA, Ford, GP. Each had strengths and weaknesses. The Army tested all 3 carefully. In July 1941, after months of testing, the Army made a major decision. It chose Willys as the primary producer. The main reasons were: Willys had the most powerful engine. Willys offered the lowest price per vehicle Willys could produce at large scale. The final standard model was called the Willys MB. However, there was still urgency. The United States expected to enter the war soon, so the Army also asked Ford to build the Willys design under license. Ford's version was called the GPW. This meant 2 companies produced nearly identical vehicles at the same time. By the end of the war, Willys built about 360,000 units. Ford built about 280,000 units. Together, they produced more than 600,000 vehicles. The Jeep had officially been born, though it was not yet called Jeep in a formal way. The name Jeep has several possible origins. One idea is that it came from the letters GP, which stood for General Purpose. When spoken quickly, GP may have sounded like Jeep. Another idea connects the name to a character called Eugene the Jeep, from the comic strip Popeye. Eugene was small, magical, and could go anywhere. Soldiers may have used the nickname because the vehicle could also go anywhere. No one knows for sure which story is correct. But by 1941, soldiers were already calling the vehicle Jeep. In February 1941, Willys demonstrated the vehicle in Washington, D.C. A test driver drove it up the steps of the U.S. Capitol building. A newspaper reporter heard the word Jeep and used it in a story. The name stuck. On December 7, 1941, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. The United States officially entered World War II. Production of the Jeep increased rapidly. Factories worked day and night. The Jeep was now an important military tool. It was used by the U.S. Army. The U.S. Marine Corps Allied forces, including Britain and the Soviet Union, Jeep vehicles were shipped to North Africa, Europe, the Pacific Islands, China, Russia. The Jeep became one of the most recognized vehicles of the war. The Jeep was simple. That was its strength. It had four-wheel drive, a small but strong engine, high ground clearance, lightweight, easy repair design. Soldiers loved it because it could climb steep hills, it could cross rivers, it could move through mud, it could carry wounded soldiers, it could mount machine guns. It rarely broke down. It became known as a vehicle that could go almost anywhere. General George C. Marshall once called the Jeep America's greatest contribution to modern warfare. That was high praise. One of the Jeep's first major battle uses was in North Africa. The desert was harsh. Hot days, cold nights, sand everywhere. Heavy trucks often got stuck. The Jeep handled the desert better than many other vehicles. It was used for scouting enemy positions, carrying supplies, transporting officers, pulling small artillery guns. The Jeep became trusted by soldiers. It saved lives. By 1942, the Jeep had become a common sight wherever American soldiers were fighting. What began as an urgent Army request had now turned into one of the most important tools of World War II. Production lines at Willys Overland and Ford Motor Company ran almost non-stop. Workers, including many women who had joined factories during the war, built Jeeps day and night. Speed was critical. Every Jeep shipped overseas could help soldiers move faster and survive longer. In Europe, the Jeep became especially important after the Allied invasion of North Africa and later Italy. The terrain in these areas was rough and unpredictable. Mountains, dirt roads, and damaged bridges made travel difficult. Larger vehicles could not always pass. The Jeep's small size allowed it to squeeze through tight areas and drive over uneven land. Commanders used Jeeps to move quickly between units. Messengers used them to carry important information. Medics used them to carry wounded soldiers from battlefields to safer areas. When Allied forces prepared for the invasion of France in 1944, the Jeep was ready. On June 6, 1944, D-Day, thousands of vehicles landed in Normandy. Among them were many Jeeps. Soldiers drove them off landing craft onto beaches filled with obstacles and enemy fire. Once inland, the Jeep helped troops push forward through the French countryside. Its ability to move across muddy fields and narrow village roads made it extremely valuable. It helped keep supply lines moving and allowed officers to stay in contact with fast-moving units. In the Pacific Theater, conditions were very different. Instead of deserts and open land, soldiers faced jungles, heavy rain, and thick mud. The Jeep proved useful here too, though conditions were harder on machines. The humid air caused rust. Mud clogged parts. Still, mechanics found the Jeep easy to repair. Parts could be replaced quickly. Soldiers often said that if a Jeep broke down, it could usually be fixed with simple tools. This ease of repair made it dependable far from large repair centers. The Jeep also served in the Soviet Union. Through a program called Lend-Lease, the United States sent equipment to its allies. Thousands of Jeeps were shipped to the Soviet Red Army. Russian soldiers used them on the Eastern Front against Germany. The cold winters there were brutal. Temperatures dropped far below freezing. Despite this, many Jeeps continued to operate. They were sometimes modified to handle snow and ice better. Soviet troops appreciated their reliability and mobility. The Jeep was not only a transport vehicle, it was also adapted for many special roles. Some were fitted with machine guns, others carried radios for communication, some were turned into small ambulances. Engineers even mounted light artillery guns on them. There were versions with stretchers attached to the sides to carry wounded soldiers. In some cases, Jeeps pulled small trailers filled with ammunition or supplies. This flexibility made the vehicle more than just transportation. It became a multi-purpose tool. One important feature of the Jeep was its four-wheel drive system. This system allowed power to go to all four wheels instead of just two. When driving over mud, sand, or snow, this made a huge difference. The wheels could grip the ground better. Soldiers could switch between two-wheel drive and four-wheel drive when needed. This helped save fuel and reduce wear on parts. The system was simple and strong, designed for tough use. Fuel efficiency also mattered. During wartime, fuel had to be transported across oceans. Every gallon counted. The Jeep used less fuel than larger trucks. It could travel long distances without refueling. This made it practical for scouting missions and quick operations. Commanders trusted it for reconnaissance work because it was fast and agile. Scouts could drive ahead of main forces, observe enemy positions, and return quickly with information. The Jeep's simple shape also made it easy to produce. Its flat body panels were easier to manufacture than curved designs. The open top reduced material use. The windshield could fold down, which lowered the vehicle's height for shipping and transport. Many Jeeps were packed tightly into ships and sent overseas. Once they arrived, they could be quickly unloaded and put into service. Soldiers formed emotional connections with their Jeeps. Many gave them nicknames. They painted personal symbols or unit markings on them. In letters home, soldiers sometimes mentioned their Jeeps as trusted companions. The vehicle was always nearby, in camps, near battle lines, or parked beside tents. It became part of daily life in the military. War reporters and photographers often included Jeeps in pictures. Images of generals standing in Jeeps became common in newspapers. One famous image showed General Dwight D. Eisenhower using a Jeep while inspecting troops. These photos helped make the vehicle a symbol of Allied strength and mobility. Civilians back home began to recognize its shape immediately. The Jeep's influence went beyond American forces. British troops used it widely. So did Free French forces after France was liberated. Resistance fighters in occupied countries sometimes used captured or supplied Jeeps. The vehicle became a shared symbol among Allied nations. It represented speed, adaptability, and cooperation. Production numbers continued to grow as the war went on. By 1943 and 1944, factories had become highly efficient. Standardization helped. Because both Willys and Ford produced similar designs, parts could often be exchanged. This made repairs easier in the field. Mechanics did not need completely different parts for each brand. This shared production system improved reliability and reduced confusion. Despite its success, the Jeep was not perfect. It could tip over if driven too fast around corners. It offered little protection from bullets or explosions. It was open to the weather, which made driving in rain or snow uncomfortable. But soldiers accepted these weaknesses because the advantages were so great. The Jeep's speed and flexibility often outweighed its risks. As the war moved toward its final stages in 1945, the Jeep continued to play an important role. In Europe, it helped Allied forces advance into Germany. In the Pacific, it supported island-hopping campaigns against Japan. Wherever American forces went, the Jeep followed. By the time World War II ended in September 1945, more than 600,000 Jeeps had been built. The small reconnaissance vehicle requested in 1940 had become one of the most recognized military machines in the world. It had proven itself in deserts, jungles, snow, and cities. It had carried generals and privates alike. It had transported supplies, weapons, and wounded soldiers. The war was ending, but the story of the Jeep was far from over. Soldiers returning home remembered the vehicle's strength and usefulness. Many began to imagine how such a machine could work in civilian life, on farms, in construction, or in remote rural areas. The battlefield had given birth to a legend. Peace would soon give it a new purpose. When World War II ended in 1945, millions of soldiers returned home. The war had changed the world. It had also changed the way people saw machines. One of the machines that made a deep impression was the military Jeep. Soldiers trusted it. They saw how strong it was. They knew it could drive across mud, snow, sand, and rocks. When peace came, many people began to think about how such a vehicle could be useful in everyday life. During the war, the Jeep had been built mainly by Willys-Overland and Ford Motor Company. After the war, military orders stopped quickly. Factories that had been producing thousands of vehicles every month now faced a problem. What would they build next? Willys-Overland believed the answer was simple: build a civilian version of the Jeep. The company understood that America was changing. Many farms still used horses and older trucks. Rural roads were rough. Construction companies needed strong vehicles. Hunters, ranchers, and outdoor workers needed something dependable. Willys believed the Jeep could become a work tool for peaceful life. In 1945, Willys introduced the CJ2A. CJ stood for Civilian Jeep. This was the first official civilian Jeep model. It looked very similar to the military version, but it had important differences. It included a tailgate, which the military version did not have. It had side-mounted spare tires and slightly more comfort. The CJ2A was painted in brighter colors instead of military green. Willys wanted people to see it as a farm and work vehicle, not just a war machine. The company marketed the CJ2A as a vehicle that could replace both a truck and a tractor. Advertisements showed the Jeep plowing fields, powering farm tools, and carrying crops. Willys even offered a power takeoff system, which allowed the engine to operate farm equipment like saws and pumps. This was a smart move. Farmers were looking for ways to increase productivity after the war. The Jeep promised to save time and labor. At first, some people were unsure. The Jeep had been a military vehicle. It was simple and rough. It did not offer the comfort of a passenger car, but many buyers quickly saw its value. It was small, easy to repair, and could drive where normal cars could not go. Roads in rural America were often unpaved. In bad weather, they became muddy and difficult. The Jeep handled these conditions easily. By the late 1940s, the Jeep was becoming common on farms, construction sites, and small towns. Willys continued to improve the model. In 1949, the company introduced the CJ3A. This version had a stronger transmission and a one-piece windshield. These changes improved durability and safety. Willys was learning that civilian customers had different needs than soldiers. Reliability was still important, but comfort and convenience also mattered. At the same time, Willys expanded beyond the small CJ models. In 1946, the company introduced the Jeep station wagon. This vehicle was very important in automotive history. It was one of the first mass-produced all-steel station wagons. Before this, many station wagons were made partly of wood. Wood required maintenance and could rot. The all-steel body was stronger and lasted longer. The Jeep station wagon kept the brand's rugged character but added more space and comfort. Families could use it for travel. Businesses could use it for deliveries. It was not just a farm tool. It became an early version of what we now call a sport utility vehicle, or SUV. At that time, the term SUV did not exist, but the idea of a multi-purpose family vehicle with strong off-road ability was already forming. In 1947, Willys introduced the Jeep truck. This was a pickup truck version built on Jeep principles. It combined a cargo bed with four-wheel drive capability. This made it attractive to farmers, ranchers, and small business owners. It could carry heavy loads while still handling rough terrain. The truck expanded Jeep's reach into the growing pickup market. The late 1940s were years of rebuilding and growth in America. The economy improved. Suburbs began to expand. More roads were built. Yet many rural areas still needed tough vehicles. Jeep found a balance between work and everyday use. It was not a luxury brand, it was practical and honest. In 1950, Willys Overland officially registered the Jeep name as a trademark. This was important. During the war, the name had been used informally by soldiers and the public. Now, it became legally protected. The Jeep brand was no longer just a military nickname, it was a business identity. The early 1950s brought another major change. In 1953, Willys Overland was purchased by Kaiser Motors, which later became Kaiser Jeep. This new ownership gave the company more financial support. Kaiser wanted to strengthen the Jeep brand and expand production. Under Kaiser's leadership, Jeep continued to grow both in the United States and overseas. During this period, Jeep vehicles were exported to many countries. Some were even built overseas under license. In developing regions, the Jeep became a symbol of reliability. In places with poor roads or rough landscapes, it performed well. It was used by farmers, police forces, aid organizations, and small businesses. The military roots of Jeep helped its reputation. People believed it was strong because it had proven itself in war. In 1955, Jeep introduced the CJ5. This model would become one of the longest-running Jeep designs. It had a slightly rounded body compared to earlier flat designs. It was also shorter and more maneuverable. The CJ5 stayed in production for decades. It became popular not only for work, but also for recreation. By the late 1950s, Americans were beginning to enjoy more leisure time. Camping, hunting, and outdoor travel became more popular. The Jeep was perfect for these activities. It could travel into forests and mountains. It could cross rivers and rocky trails. For many people, owning a Jeep meant freedom and adventure. At the same time, Jeep faced competition from other companies entering the four-wheel drive market. But Jeep had a strong advantage: experience. It had built hundreds of thousands of vehicles in the harshest conditions during World War II. That history gave it credibility. The 1960s would bring even bigger changes. Society was evolving. Highways were expanding. Families wanted vehicles that combined comfort with capability. Jeep responded with one of its most important models, the Wagoneer. Introduced in 1963 under Kaiser Jeep, the Wagoneer was revolutionary. It offered four-wheel drive, but it also had features usually found in passenger cars. It included automatic transmission, independent front suspension, and a more refined interior. The Wagoneer helped create the modern SUV concept. It showed that a vehicle could be both rugged and comfortable. The Wagoneer marked a turning point. Jeep was no longer just a farm or utility vehicle brand. It was becoming a lifestyle brand. Families could drive it to school during the week and to the mountains on the weekend. This balance of strength and comfort would shape Jeep's future for decades. By the end of the 1960s, Jeep had firmly established itself in civilian life. It had moved from battlefields to farms, from military bases to suburban driveways. The same qualities that made it valuable in war, strength, simplicity, and reliability, made it successful in peace. But change was coming again. In 1970, a new company would take control of Jeep. That change would lead to a new chapter in the brand's history. By the early 1960s, Jeep had fully stepped into civilian life. What began as a simple farm and work vehicle was now becoming something bigger. Under the ownership of Kaiser Motors, the Jeep brand focused on expanding its lineup and reaching new types of customers. America itself was changing. Cities were growing, highways were expanding, and more families were moving into suburbs. People wanted vehicles that could do more than one job. They wanted something strong, but also comfortable. The Jeep Wagoneer, introduced in 1963, was a major turning point. Designed by engineer Brooks Stevens, it looked different from earlier Jeep models. It had a longer body, more interior space, and smoother styling. Unlike the older CJ models, which were open and simple, the Wagoneer had doors, windows, and more protection from weather. It offered optional four-wheel drive, but it also felt more like a family car inside. This combination was new. It was not just a truck, and it was not just a car. It was something in between. The Wagoneer helped create what would later be called the sport utility vehicle. At the time, that term did not exist, but the idea was clear. A vehicle could carry a family comfortably and still handle rough terrain. It could drive on highways during the week and explore trails on weekends. This balance attracted many buyers. Sales of the Wagoneer grew steadily throughout the 1960s. At the same time, Jeep continued to improve its CJ series. The CJ5 remained popular for work and recreation. Kaiser Jeep made small updates to improve engines, transmissions, and interior details. The company understood that even simple vehicles needed improvements over time. Stronger engines gave better performance. Improved heating systems made winter driving more comfortable. Small changes helped keep customers loyal. Jeep also continued to sell pickup trucks. The Jeep Gladiator, introduced in the early 1960s, was based on the Wagoneer platform. It offered a larger cargo bed and more power. It competed with other American pickup trucks, but stood out because of its four-wheel drive strength. In rural areas and mountainous regions, this feature was very important. The Gladiator helped Jeep reach customers who needed both cargo space and off-road ability. During the 1960s, Jeep expanded further into international markets. Some vehicles were assembled overseas under license agreements. In countries with rough landscapes and limited road systems, the Jeep performed well. It was used by farmers, police, utility companies, and even small transportation businesses. In many parts of the world, the word Jeep became a general term for any small four-wheel drive vehicle. This showed how strong the brand image had become. Marketing during this period began to change as well. In the early years after World War II, advertisements focused mainly on work. They showed Jeeps plowing fields or carrying heavy loads. By the 1960s, ads began to show families camping, fishing, and exploring nature. Jeep was no longer only a tool. It was becoming a symbol of freedom and adventure. This shift reflected broader social changes. Americans were traveling more. National parks became popular vacation spots. Outdoor recreation was growing. Even with this growth, Jeep faced challenges. Larger car companies had more money and bigger production facilities. They could produce vehicles at lower costs. Kaiser Jeep had to manage its resources carefully. Still, the brand survived because it had a clear identity. It stood for strength, dependability, and the ability to go anywhere. By the late 1960s, the American auto market was becoming more competitive. Consumers expected more comfort and better performance. Safety standards were also becoming stricter. Jeep had to invest in development to keep up. The Wagoneer continued to improve with better engines and smoother driving systems. Automatic transmissions became more common, making the vehicles easier to drive in city traffic. The CJ models, though simple, remained popular with outdoor enthusiasts. Hunters, campers, and off-road hobbyists loved their compact size and strong design. Many owners customized their Jeeps with larger tires, winches, or extra lights. This culture of personalization began during this time and would continue for decades. Jeep was not just a product. It was becoming a community. Financial pressure eventually led to another major change. In 1970, Kaiser decided to sell the Jeep brand. It was purchased by American Motors Corporation, often called AMC. This marked the end of the Kaiser era. The sale showed how valuable the Jeep name had become. Even though Kaiser struggled financially, Jeep itself remained strong and respected. As the 1960s came to an end, Jeep had completed an important transformation. It had moved from being a military vehicle built for war to a civilian brand known for work, family travel, and outdoor adventure. It had introduced vehicles like the Wagoneer that shaped the future of the SUV market. It had built a global reputation for toughness. Most importantly, it had created a clear identity that would survive ownership changes and industry challenges. The years from 1945 to 1969 laid the foundation for everything that followed. Jeep learned how to serve civilian customers. It discovered that strength and comfort could exist together. It built vehicles that farmers trusted, families enjoyed, and adventurers loved. The next era, under new ownership, would bring modernization, new designs, and even greater influence in the automotive world. The Jeep story was still growing, and the world was changing again. In 1970, a major change happened in the history of Jeep. The brand was sold by Kaiser to American Motors Corporation, often called AMC. At that time, AMC was one of the smaller car companies in the United States. It competed with much larger companies like Ford Motor Company and General Motors. AMC needed something strong and unique to survive. Jeep was exactly that. When AMC bought Jeep, it understood that the brand had a powerful image. Jeep stood for strength, adventure, and the ability to go anywhere. But AMC also knew that the automotive world was changing. Customers wanted more comfort, better performance, and improved safety. The company decided to modernize Jeep while keeping its rugged character. One of the most important models during this period was the Jeep Cherokee. The Cherokee name first appeared in the early 1970s as a sportier version of the Wagoneer. The Wagoneer had already proven that a four-wheel drive vehicle could be comfortable and practical. The Cherokee took that idea further. It offered a more youthful design and appealed to drivers who wanted both power and style. During the 1970s, the American economy faced serious challenges. In 1973, the oil crisis caused fuel prices to rise sharply. Long lines formed at gas stations. Many Americans began to worry about fuel efficiency. Large vehicles with powerful engines were no longer as attractive as they had been. This created a difficult situation for SUV and truck manufacturers. AMC responded by making improvements to Jeep engines and offering more efficient options. While Jeeps were not small cars, they needed to become more practical for daily use. Engineers worked on reducing weight and improving fuel economy without losing strength. This balance was not easy, but it was necessary. The CJ series continued to be important during this time. The CJ5 remained popular, but AMC introduced the CJ7 in 1976. The CJ7 had a slightly longer wheelbase than the CJ5, which improved stability and handling. It also offered more comfort features, including automatic transmission options and better interiors. The CJ7 quickly became one of the most successful Jeep models of the era. The CJ7 showed that Jeep could combine tradition with progress. It still had the classic open-top design and strong four-wheel drive system, but it also felt more refined. Drivers could use it for daily commuting as well as weekend adventures. This flexibility helped Jeep survive during a challenging economic period. Another important development during the AMC years was the introduction of the Quadra-Track system. This was a full-time four-wheel drive system that allowed drivers to operate in four-wheel drive without manually switching modes. It made driving easier and more convenient, especially on changing road conditions like snow or rain. This system showed that Jeep was investing in technology, not just relying on its past reputation. By the late 1970s, sport utility vehicles were slowly gaining popularity. They were still not as common as passenger cars, but interest was growing. Many Americans enjoyed outdoor activities such as camping, skiing, and off-road driving. Jeep fit perfectly into this lifestyle. Its advertising began to focus more on adventure and freedom rather than simple utility work. In 1979, another global oil crisis created new pressure on the auto industry. Fuel prices rose again, and economic uncertainty increased. AMC faced financial difficulties. The company needed a breakthrough vehicle to secure its future. That breakthrough would come in the early 1980s with a completely new design. In 1984, Jeep introduced one of its most important vehicles ever, the Jeep Cherokee XJ. This model was revolutionary. Unlike previous Jeeps, which were built on a traditional body-on-frame structure, the Cherokee XJ used a unibody construction. This meant the body and frame were built as one solid structure. It reduced weight and improved handling. The Cherokee XJ was smaller than many other SUVs of the time. It was easier to drive in cities and more fuel efficient, yet it still offered strong four-wheel drive capability. This balance made it extremely popular. Many people who had never considered buying a Jeep before were now interested. The Cherokee XJ is often credited with creating the modern compact SUV segment. It showed that SUVs did not have to be large or heavy to be capable. Families could use them as everyday vehicles. Young professionals could drive them to work. Outdoor lovers could take them into the mountains. The success of the Cherokee XJ helped AMC financially, but the company still faced challenges. Competition in the automotive industry was intense. Larger companies had more resources and bigger marketing budgets. AMC formed a partnership with the French company Renault to gain financial support and international access. This partnership helped AMC continue developing new models and technologies. Throughout the 1980s, Jeep's identity became clearer than ever. It was not just a work vehicle brand. It was not just a luxury SUV maker. It was something unique. It offered real off-road capability, combined with increasing comfort and practicality. By 1986, the Jeep brand was stronger than it had been in many years. The CJ7 was still popular. The Cherokee XJ was a major success. The Wagoneer continued to serve families who wanted space and strength, but AMC itself remained financially fragile. The stage was set for another major change. In 1987, Jeep would once again be sold to a new owner. That transition would begin a new chapter in the brand's long and evolving story. By the early 1980s, Jeep had become the most valuable part of American Motors Corporation. AMC itself was still smaller than its competitors, but Jeep gave the company something special. While other car brands focused mostly on sedans and large cars, Jeep focused on strength and adventure. This focus helped it stand out in a crowded market. The launch of the Cherokee XJ in 1984 was one of the most important moments in Jeep's history. It was modern, lighter, and easier to drive than older models. The unibody design made it stronger in some ways and lighter in weight. This helped improve fuel efficiency at a time when many buyers cared about saving money on gas. Even though it was smaller than earlier Jeeps, it still handled rough roads and off-road trails very well. Drivers felt confident taking it into snow, mud, and rocky terrain. The Cherokee XJ also offered more comfort than older models. It had better seats, improved heating and cooling systems, and a smoother ride on highways. This meant families could use it every day. Parents could drive children to school during the week and take the vehicle camping on weekends. This mix of daily comfort and outdoor ability became a key part of Jeep's success. At the same time, the CJ7 remained a favorite for people who loved open-air driving and classic Jeep style. The CJ7 kept the removable top and doors, allowing drivers to feel close to nature. It also kept its strong body-on-frame design and solid axles, which were ideal for serious off-road driving. Many owners modified their CJ7s with lift kits, larger tires, and extra equipment. This customization culture grew stronger during the 1980s and helped build a loyal Jeep community. Jeep engineers continued to improve four-wheel drive systems. Some models offered part-time four-wheel drive, where the driver manually selected the mode. Others used advanced systems that automatically adjusted power between the wheels. These improvements made driving safer and more convenient, especially in areas with snow or heavy rain. Jeep wanted its vehicles to be both tough and easy to use. The Wagoneer also remained an important model during this time. It became more refined and comfortable, almost like a luxury vehicle. Some versions included wood-style panels on the sides, giving it a unique look. Inside, buyers could find air conditioning, premium seats, and advanced sound systems. The Wagoneer showed that an SUV could compete with luxury cars in comfort while still offering strong off-road ability. However, AMC continued to face financial problems. Developing new vehicles required a lot of money. Larger companies had more resources and bigger production numbers, which lowered their costs. AMC had to work carefully to survive. The partnership with Renault helped for a time, but it did not completely solve the company's challenges. Even with these financial struggles, Jeep's reputation kept growing. Outdoor magazines praised its off-road ability. Drivers shared stories of driving through deep snow or climbing rocky hills. In many regions, owning a Jeep became a symbol of independence and strength. The brand was no longer just practical, it was emotional. People felt proud to own one. By the mid-1980s, it became clear that AMC could not continue alone. In 1987, Chrysler Corporation decided to buy AMC. Chrysler was interested mainly in the Jeep brand. It saw strong potential in the growing SUV market. The Cherokee XJ was selling well, and SUVs were becoming more popular each year. The sale marked the end of the AMC era for Jeep. However, AMC's influence remained important. During those years, Jeep had transformed from a small utility vehicle maker into a leader in the modern SUV segment. The Cherokee XJ, the improved Wagoneer, and the CJ7 all helped build that foundation. The years from 1970 to 1986 were about survival and innovation. Jeep faced oil crises, economic downturns, and financial pressure. Yet it managed to create some of the most important SUV designs in history. It proved that a vehicle could be strong, practical, comfortable, and fun at the same time. When Chrysler took control in 1987, Jeep was no longer just a historic military brand. It was a modern automotive force with a clear identity and a loyal following. The next chapter would bring even more growth, global expansion, and new models that would shape the SUV market for decades to come. In 1987, a major turning point happened in Jeep's history. Chrysler Corporation bought American Motors Corporation, mainly because it wanted the Jeep brand. At that time, sport utility vehicles were becoming more popular in the United States. Chrysler saw that Jeep had strong potential for growth. The Cherokee XJ was selling well, and the brand had a loyal customer base. Chrysler believed that with more money, better factories, and wider distribution, Jeep could become even more successful. Under Chrysler, Jeep gained stronger financial support. This allowed engineers to invest in new designs and better technology. One of the first big projects during this period was the development of a new flagship SUV. That vehicle would become one of the most important models in Jeep history. In 1992, Jeep introduced the Grand Cherokee. It was revealed in a dramatic way at the North American International Auto Show in Detroit. The vehicle drove through a large glass window at the convention center, surprising the audience. This bold introduction showed that Jeep was entering a new level of confidence and ambition. The Grand Cherokee combined strong off-road ability with high comfort and advanced features. It had powerful engine options, a smooth ride, and a more luxurious interior than earlier Jeep models. Buyers could enjoy leather seats, advanced sound systems, and improved safety features. At the same time, it kept Jeep's four-wheel drive strength. The Grand Cherokee quickly became popular with families and professionals who wanted both capability and comfort. The Cherokee XJ continued to sell well during the 1990s. It remained a compact SUV with strong performance and reliability. Many people appreciated its balance between size and strength. It was small enough for city driving, but tough enough for outdoor adventures. The Cherokee helped Jeep dominate the growing SUV market. Another important model during this time was the Jeep Wrangler. In 1987, shortly after Chrysler's purchase, the Wrangler YJ replaced the older CJ7. The Wrangler kept the classic open-top design and removable doors. However, it included improvements for safety and comfort. The YJ introduced square headlights, which were different from the traditional round design. Some Jeep fans were unsure about this change, but the Wrangler remained popular. In 1997, Jeep released the Wrangler TJ. This model returned to the classic round headlights, which made many fans happy. It also introduced coil spring suspension, improving ride comfort while keeping strong off-road ability. The Wrangler TJ became one of the most loved Jeep models. It kept the brand's heritage alive while adding modern engineering. During the 1990s, SUVs became a major part of the American car market. More families chose SUVs instead of traditional station wagons. They liked the higher driving position, strong design, and feeling of safety. Jeep benefited greatly from this trend. Sales increased, and the brand's reputation grew. In 1998, another major change occurred. Chrysler merged with the German company Daimler-Benz, forming Daimler Chrysler. This merger aimed to combine American and German engineering strengths. For Jeep, this meant access to new technologies in global markets. Under Daimler Chrysler, Jeep expanded further into Europe and other regions. The Grand Cherokee was sold internationally and production increased. Engineers worked on improving safety systems, engine efficiency, and interior quality. The brand began to focus more on global appeal, not just American buyers. In 2001, Jeep introduced a new generation of the Cherokee, known as the Liberty in North America. The Liberty had a more rounded design compared to the boxy Cherokee XJ. It offered modern safety features and improved comfort. While some traditional fans preferred the older design, the Liberty attracted new customers who wanted a more modern look. At the same time, the Grand Cherokee continued to evolve. New versions offered stronger engines, including V8 options. Luxury features increased, making some models feel close to premium European SUVs. Jeep was no longer seen only as a rugged outdoor brand. It was becoming competitive in the luxury SUV segment. Throughout this period, Jeep focused on improving four-wheel drive systems. Systems like Quadra-Track and Quadra-Drive allowed better traction and control in difficult conditions. These systems automatically adjusted power between wheels, improving safety on snow, rain, and rough terrain. Jeep wanted drivers to feel confident in all conditions. By the mid-2000s, Jeep had a wide lineup. The Wrangler served adventure lovers. The Liberty targeted compact SUV buyers. The Grand Cherokee offered luxury and performance. The brand had grown far beyond its original military roots, yet it still promoted its heritage in advertising. Jeep commercials often showed mountains, rivers, and rugged landscapes, reminding customers of its history. However, the automotive world was changing again. Fuel prices were rising in the mid-2000s. Environmental concerns were growing. Consumers began asking for better fuel efficiency. Large SUVs faced criticism for high fuel consumption. Jeep needed to adapt once again. By 2007, another big shift would take place. Daimler decided to sell Chrysler, leading to new challenges ahead. But during the 1987 to 2007 period, Jeep had grown from a respected SUV maker into a global automotive icon. It had expanded its lineup, improved technology, and entered new markets around the world. By the early 2000s, Jeep had become one of the strongest brands inside Daimler Chrysler. Sport utility vehicles were no longer a small part of the market. They were now a major force in the automotive world. Families liked the space and higher seating position. Many drivers felt safer in larger vehicles. Jeep benefited from this trend because it already had a long history of building strong four-wheel drive vehicles. The Grand Cherokee continued to improve during this period. Engineers worked on better suspension systems to make the ride smoother on highways. They also added more advanced safety features such as improved airbags and electronic stability control. These changes helped the Grand Cherokee compete with other growing SUV brands. It was no longer just about off-road power. It was also about comfort, safety, and technology. Jeep also introduced the Commander in 2005. The Commander was a larger SUV with 3 rows of seats. It was designed for bigger families who needed more space. The vehicle kept Jeep's boxy and strong design language, but it focused on carrying more passengers. While it offered good capability, it entered a very competitive market. Many companies were producing large SUVs at that time. In 2007, Jeep introduced the Compass and the Patriot. These two models were smaller and more fuel-efficient than traditional Jeep SUVs. They were designed to attract younger buyers and city drivers. Not all of these models had strong off-road capability like the Wrangler, but they allowed Jeep to reach new customers. The company understood that not every buyer needed extreme trail performance. Some wanted the Jeep image with everyday practicality. During this time, the Wrangler also entered a new generation. In 2007, Jeep released the Wrangler JK. This version was larger and offered a 4-door model called the Wrangler Unlimited. The 4-door design was very important. For many years, the Wrangler had mainly been a 2-door vehicle. The new 4-door version made it more practical for families. It allowed Jeep to keep its classic open-air style while expanding its market. Technology in vehicles was improving quickly in the early 2000s. Jeep added better navigation systems, upgraded sound systems, and improved climate control features. These additions made the vehicles more comfortable for long trips. At the same time, Jeep worked to maintain its off-road reputation. Special editions like the Rubicon version of the Wrangler offered heavy-duty axles, locking differentials, and strong tires for serious off-road drivers. However, the global economy began to show signs of trouble in the mid-2000s. Fuel prices were rising again. Many customers started to think more about fuel efficiency. Larger SUVs faced criticism for high fuel use. Environmental concerns were becoming stronger worldwide. Jeep had to think carefully about its future direction. In 2007, Daimler decided to sell Chrysler. The company was purchased by a private investment group. This created uncertainty for all Chrysler brands, including Jeep. The automotive industry was entering a difficult period. Economic pressure was increasing, and competition from international car makers was growing. Even during these uncertain times, Jeep remained one of the most valuable assets within the company. Its strong brand image and loyal customer base gave it stability. The Wrangler continued to sell well. The Grand Cherokee remained popular in both North America and international markets. Jeep had successfully expanded beyond the United States and was now recognized worldwide. The period from 1987 to 2007 transformed Jeep in many ways. Under Chrysler, the brand gained financial strength and introduced the Grand Cherokee. Under Daimler Chrysler, it improved technology and expanded globally. It moved into luxury segments while still honoring its rugged roots. It created new models to reach wider audiences. By the end of 2007, Jeep was no longer just a niche off-road brand. It was a global SUV leader with multiple vehicle types. However, new challenges were approaching. The global financial crisis of 2008 would test the entire automotive industry. Jeep would once again need to adapt and survive. In 2008, the world faced a serious financial crisis. Banks failed, businesses closed, and many people lost their jobs. The automotive industry was hit very hard. Car sales dropped quickly because families were worried about money. Large vehicles, especially SUVs and trucks, were affected because they used more fuel and cost more to buy. At that time, Jeep was part of Chrysler LLC, which was already facing financial trouble. Chrysler did not have enough money to survive the economic downturn. In 2009, the company filed for bankruptcy protection. This was a very difficult moment. Many people wondered if Chrysler and Jeep would survive. The United States government stepped in to support Chrysler and another major company, General Motors. The goal was to protect jobs and prevent the collapse of the American auto industry. During this time, a new partnership was formed between Chrysler and the Italian car company Fiat. This partnership would change Jeep's future in a major way. The leader of Fiat at that time was Sergio Marchionne. He was known as a strong and practical business leader. He believed that Jeep was one of the most valuable brands inside Chrysler. He saw global potential in Jeep, not just in the United States. Marchionne believed Jeep could become a worldwide SUV leader. Under Fiat's leadership, Chrysler began to recover. The company reorganized its structure and focused on its strongest brands. Jeep was placed at the center of the recovery plan. The strategy was clear: expand Jeep globally, improve quality, and introduce new models. One of the first major improvements came with the redesign of the Grand Cherokee in 2011. The new model had a more modern design, better interior materials, and improved technology. It also offered better fuel efficiency and smoother driving. The new Grand Cherokee received positive reviews. Many critics said it felt more refined and competitive with luxury SUVs from Europe and Asia. At the same time, Jeep worked to improve smaller models like the Compass and Patriot. Earlier versions had faced criticism for interior quality and performance. Under Fiat's guidance, engineers improved design, materials, and engines. The company understood that modern customers expected higher standards. A major part of Fiat's plan was global expansion. Before this period, Jeep was strongest in North America. Now, the goal was to grow in Europe, Asia, South America, and other regions. Production facilities were expanded or built in countries such as Italy, Brazil, China, and India. This helped reduce costs and allowed Jeep to sell vehicles closer to local markets. In 2014, Jeep introduced an important new model, the Jeep Renegade. This was a small SUV designed for global markets. It was built on a platform shared with Fiat. The Renegade was smaller than the Cherokee and Grand Cherokee, making it easier to drive in cities. It also offered four-wheel drive versions for customers who still wanted off-road ability. The Renegade was built in Italy and Brazil, showing Jeep's new international direction. It became popular in Europe, where smaller vehicles were preferred. This was a big step for Jeep. For the first time, the brand had a strong product designed mainly for global customers, not only American buyers. Sales began to grow quickly. Between 2009 and the mid-2010s, Jeep's global sales increased significantly. The brand broke sales records year after year. It became one of the fastest-growing SUV brands in the world. This success helped Chrysler, now renamed Fiat Chrysler Automobiles, return to financial health. Another important update came with the Cherokee name returning in 2014 as a completely new design. This version replaced the older Liberty model. It offered modern styling, advanced safety features, and improved fuel efficiency. Some fans were surprised by its bold design, but the vehicle attracted many new buyers. During this period, Jeep also invested heavily in technology. Vehicles began to include touchscreen infotainment systems, smartphone connectivity, and advanced driver assistance systems. Features like blind spot monitoring and adaptive cruise control became available. These improvements helped Jeep compete with other major SUV brands. The Wrangler also entered a new generation during this era. In 2018, Jeep introduced the Wrangler JL. This model kept the classic design, but improved almost every part of the vehicle. It used lighter materials, including aluminum panels, to reduce weight. It offered more advanced safety systems and better fuel economy. The Wrangler remained one of Jeep's strongest symbols, representing its heritage and off-road power. By the late 2010s, Jeep was no longer just surviving, it was thriving. It had strong sales in North America, Europe, China, and Latin America. It offered a wide lineup, from small crossovers to luxury SUVs. The crisis of 2008 had nearly destroyed Chrysler, but under Fiat's leadership, Jeep became the center of a major recovery. The period from 2008 to the mid-2010s showed how strong the Jeep brand truly was. Even during economic collapse, it survived. With the right strategy, it grew stronger than before. But the story did not stop there. The automotive world was changing again. Environmental rules were becoming stricter. Electric vehicles were starting to appear. Jeep would soon need to prepare for a new kind of future. By the mid-2010s, Jeep had fully recovered from the financial crisis. Under Fiat Chrysler Automobiles, the brand became the most important part of the company's global strategy. Sales numbers continued to rise each year. Jeep was no longer just an American brand. It had become a worldwide name. One of the main reasons for this success was smart global production. Jeep vehicles were now built in several countries. Factories in the United States continued to produce popular models like the Wrangler and Grand Cherokee. At the same time, other models were produced in Italy, Brazil, China, India, and Mexico. This allowed Jeep to reduce shipping costs and better serve local markets. Customers in different regions could buy vehicles built closer to home. China became an especially important market during this time. The Chinese auto market was growing very fast, and SUVs were becoming popular there. Jeep partnered with local manufacturers to build and sell vehicles inside China. This helped the brand avoid high import taxes and compete more effectively with other global car companies. In South America, especially Brazil, Jeep also saw strong growth. The company opened modern factories and introduced models designed for local needs. These vehicles were often smaller and more fuel efficient while still keeping the Jeep identity. The Renegade and Compass performed very well in these markets. The Jeep Compass was redesigned in 2017 and became one of the brand's best-selling models worldwide. It was larger and more refined than earlier versions. The new Compass offered better interior quality, improved safety features, and modern technology. It fit perfectly between the smaller Renegade and the larger Cherokee. Many customers liked its balance of size, price, and capability. At the same time, the Grand Cherokee continued to represent Jeep's move into the premium SUV market. High-end versions included powerful V8 engines, advanced safety systems, and luxury interiors. Special performance versions, such as the Trackhawk, showed that Jeep could combine high speed with SUV strength. These models attracted attention and helped strengthen the brand's image. The Wrangler also remained a key part of Jeep's identity. The 2018 Wrangler JL brought important improvements while keeping the classic look. It offered better fuel economy, improved ride comfort, and advanced off-road systems. Jeep also introduced new special editions that celebrated the brand's history and adventure spirit. Many buyers chose the Wrangler not just as transportation, but as a lifestyle vehicle. During this period, environmental concerns became more serious worldwide. Governments began introducing stricter emissions rules. Car companies needed to reduce fuel consumption and pollution. Jeep understood that it had to adapt to these changes. The brand began working on hybrid and electric technologies. In 2020, Jeep introduced plug-in hybrid versions called 4xe models. The Wrangler 4xe was one of the first examples. It combined a traditional gasoline engine with an electric motor. This allowed drivers to travel short distances using only electric power while still keeping full off-road capability. The 4xe system showed that Jeep could modernize without losing its core strength. By the end of the 2010s, Jeep had reached record sales levels globally. It had one of the strongest SUV lineups in the industry. The brand had survived bankruptcy, changed ownership, and expanded worldwide. It had moved from crisis to growth. In 2019 and 2020, another big change happened. Fiat Chrysler Automobiles agreed to merge with the French company PSA Group. This merger created a new global company called Stellantis in 2021. Jeep would now be part of one of the largest automotive groups in the world. As 2020 ended, the global COVID-19 pandemic created new challenges for the auto industry. Factories temporarily closed, and supply chains were disrupted. However, SUVs remained popular, and Jeep continued to show strong demand in many markets. The years from 2008 to 2020 proved how strong and flexible the Jeep brand was. It survived one of the worst financial crises in history. It expanded to new continents. It introduced new models for global customers. It improved technology and began moving toward electrification. By 2020, Jeep was no longer just a historic American name. It was a global SUV leader preparing for an electric future. The next chapter would focus on innovation, sustainability, and keeping the Jeep spirit alive in a changing world. In 2021, a major change happened in Jeep's history. Fiat Chrysler Automobiles officially merged with PSA Group. This merger created a new global company called Stellantis. Stellantis became one of the largest car companies in the world. It owned many brands from Europe and America. Among all these brands, Jeep was one of the most important. Stellantis announced that Jeep would play a key role in its global SUV strategy. The company believed that Jeep had one of the strongest brand identities in the automotive industry. It stood for freedom, adventure, strength, and the ability to go anywhere. These values were powerful in many countries, not just in the United States. At the same time, the automotive world was changing quickly. Governments were creating stricter rules about emissions and fuel efficiency. Many countries announced future bans on new gasoline-only vehicles. Electric vehicles were becoming more common. Car companies had to move toward electrification to survive. Jeep faced a big challenge. How could a brand known for powerful engines and off-road strength move into the electric future? The answer began with the 4xe models. The Wrangler 4xe and the Grand Cherokee 4xe became important examples of Jeep's new direction. These vehicles used plug-in hybrid technology. They combined a gasoline engine with one or more electric motors. This system allowed drivers to travel short distances using only electric power. When more power was needed, the gasoline engine worked together with the electric motor. The Wrangler 4xe showed that electrification did not mean weakness. It kept strong off-road performance. In fact, the electric motor provided instant torque, which helped during rock climbing and steep trails. Many customers were surprised that a hybrid vehicle could still feel like a true Jeep. The Grand Cherokee 4xe also played an important role. It offered a balance of luxury, technology, and environmental responsibility. It allowed families to enjoy comfort while reducing fuel consumption. Jeep made it clear that electrification was not the end of adventure. Instead, it was the next step in evolution. In addition to hybrids, Jeep began planning fully electric models. The company announced future electric SUVs that would carry the Jeep name into a new era. One example was the Jeep Recon, designed as an all-electric off-road SUV. Another concept model, called the Magneto, was an electric version of the Wrangler used to show what was possible. These vehicles demonstrated that electric power could handle tough trails and difficult terrain. At the same time, Jeep revived a historic name. In 2021, the company reintroduced the Wagoneer and Grand Wagoneer as full-size luxury SUVs. These new models were much larger and more advanced than earlier versions from the 1960s and 1970s. They included high-quality interiors, advanced driver assistance systems, and large digital screens. With these models, Jeep entered the premium SUV market more seriously than ever before. The return of the Wagoneer name showed how Jeep respected its history while moving forward. It connected the past with the present. The original Wagoneer helped create the SUV idea in the 1960s. The new Wagoneer aimed to compete with luxury SUVs from Europe and Asia. Technology became a central focus for Jeep during this period. Modern vehicles included advanced infotainment systems with large touchscreens. Smartphone integration became standard. Safety systems such as lane keeping assist, adaptive cruise control, and automatic emergency braking were added across many models. And these features helped Jeep meet global safety standards and customer expectations. Jeep also continued to invest in its global markets. Production expanded in North America, Europe, Asia, and South America. Models were adapted for local needs. In some regions, smaller SUVs were more popular. In others, larger family vehicles were preferred. Jeep worked to offer a range that could satisfy different types of drivers around the world. The COVID-19 pandemic created temporary factory shutdowns and supply chain problems. Microchip shortages affected the entire auto industry. Despite these difficulties, Jeep remained one of Stellantis' strongest brands. Demand for SUVs stayed high, especially in North America. The Wrangler and Grand Cherokee continued to perform well in sales. Environmental responsibility became a bigger part of Jeep's public image. The company began promoting the idea that electric Jeeps would allow people to explore nature while protecting it. Marketing messages focused on quiet electric driving in forests and mountains. Jeep wanted to show that adventure and sustainability could exist together. By the early 2020s, Jeep had completed a full transformation. It had started as a military vehicle in 1940. It had become a farm tool after World War II. It had grown into a modern SUV leader in the 1980s and 1990s. It had survived financial crisis in 2008. Now, it was preparing for an electric future under Stellantis. The brand's identity remained strong. Jeep still represented freedom and strength, but it was also learning to represent innovation and environmental awareness. The next years would determine how successfully Jeep could balance tradition and technology. The story of Jeep was not just about vehicles. It was about adaptation. Every decade brought new challenges. Every time, Jeep found a way to survive and grow. As the 2020s continued, Jeep focused strongly on electrification. Under Stellantis, the company announced a long-term plan to offer electric versions of all its main models. This was a bold promise. Jeep had built its reputation on strong gasoline engines and tough off-road performance. Moving toward electric power was not just a technical change. It was a cultural shift for the brand. The Wrangler 4xe quickly became one of the best-selling plug-in hybrid vehicles in the United States. Many buyers liked the idea of driving short distances using only electric power. For daily trips to work or school, they could reduce fuel use. On weekends, they could still take the Wrangler onto rough trails. This balance helped customers feel comfortable with the new technology. Jeep also began developing fully electric SUVs. One of the first production models was the Jeep Avenger, designed mainly for the European market. It was a small, fully electric SUV built for city driving, but still carrying Jeep design elements. It showed that the brand could build compact electric vehicles without losing its identity. The Avenger received positive attention in Europe, where electric vehicles were growing quickly. At the same time, Jeep continued testing electric off-road concepts. The Magneto concept, based on the Wrangler, showed that electric motors could provide strong torque for climbing rocks and steep hills. Electric vehicles offer instant power when the driver presses the accelerator. This can be helpful in off-road situations where careful control is needed. Jeep used these concepts to prove that electric technology could match or even improve traditional performance. The company also invested in battery research and charging solutions. Range anxiety, or the fear of running out of battery power, was still a concern for many drivers. Jeep worked to improve battery range and provide better information systems inside vehicles. Navigation systems could now show nearby charging stations and estimate driving range more accurately. At the same time, Jeep did not forget its gasoline models. The company understood that in many parts of the world, electric charging networks were still limited. For this reason, traditional engines continued to be offered alongside hybrid and electric versions. Jeep aimed to give customers options instead of forcing change too quickly. The Wagoneer and Grand Wagoneer also continued to evolve. These large luxury SUVs competed with high-end brands in the premium market. They included advanced driver assistance systems, large digital displays, and powerful sound systems. Jeep wanted to prove that it could compete not only in off-road performance, but also in comfort and technology. One important part of Jeep's strategy was maintaining its strong community. Jeep owners have always formed clubs and groups. They attend off-road events and gatherings across the world. Jeep continued to support these communities through organized events and social media engagement. Even with new electric models, the company encouraged adventure and exploration. Marketing during this time often focused on the idea that electric Jeeps could help protect nature. Quiet electric driving was presented as a way to enjoy the outdoors without disturbing wildlife. Jeep used this message to connect environmental responsibility with its traditional love for adventure. However, challenges remained. The global supply chain faced disruptions. Battery materials became more expensive. Competition in the electric SUV market increased quickly. Many companies introduced their own electric models. Jeep had to move carefully to stay competitive while protecting its brand image. By the mid-2020s, Jeep had built a lineup that included gasoline, hybrid, and fully electric vehicles. This showed flexibility. The brand understood that different customers had different needs. Some wanted traditional power and sound. Others preferred quiet electric driving. Jeep aimed to serve both groups. Looking at its long history, Jeep has always changed with the times. It began as a military necessity in 1940. It became a farm tool after World War II. It helped create the SUV market in the 1960s and 1970s. It survived financial crisis in 2008. Now, it is adapting to the electric age. The future of Jeep depends on balancing heritage and innovation. The company must protect its strong identity while embracing new technology. If it succeeds, Jeep will continue to represent freedom and strength for many generations. From battlefields to city streets, from deserts to mountains, Jeep's journey has been long and remarkable. The story is still being written, but one thing remains clear: the spirit of Jeep continues to move forward.